Hey everyone, it's Wendy Hutchinson. Welcome to The Path of Me. I'm your host, and I've got the lovely Nancy Eklund in the house, who's a personal friend. Hey Nancy, she's a stylist for Elevation Salon in Livermore, California. Personal friend of mine forever, and I just wanted to have her on because her journey has been so incredible to watch and to walk beside. And without further ado, welcome, Nancy. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much for letting me come on. It's such an honor. It's awesome.
Yeah, well,
Wendy.
I appreciate it. I'm a little intimidated because as we were talking before, my hair is doing the Houston like crazy frizz thing, but you
gotta
of course,
embrace it, girl.
I know, I gotta embrace myself. Accept myself fully for who I am and what I look like. Yes. Hair frizz and all.
You're gorgeous.
I'll right back at you, sister. So let's just kind of start at the beginning. What was your upbringing like? Because I know that's a huge thing that shapes us, right? The stories we tell and the behaviors that we grow up with, patterns.
Yeah, so born and raised in Los Angeles. Feel really lucky to be so because I actually, from the beginning, it's been kind of strange. And the more I tell like my origin story, so to speak, the more I realize how many people don't really quite expect it or they're very surprised by it, even close friends of mine. Mm-hmm. But I actually was, my birth mother was a Vietnam refugee. And she had me in distress, I'm sure. Mm-hmm. And so at a very, very young age, I was actually a child protective service case and was put into foster care.
Like how old were you?
I want to say like a year old.
Wow, so you're a baby.
I was a baby, and I was put into foster care, really wonderful family. And I actually have very, very fond memories of them. And very shortly after that was adopted by my parents, Pat and Dave Okasaki, and they raised me in LA County. And as it turns out, like I actually was less than 30 miles from many of my half siblings, other children
really?
that were had.
Interesting.
And that has unfolded throughout my adulthood.
Wow, I had no idea about that.
Yeah. So that's sort of like how I came into the world.
Yeah. Well, that's such an interesting story.
By it because there's or I guess there used to be like in previous generations, just like a stigma around adoption. People who had to adopt, or children who were either adopted or lost in the foster system. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of stigma and fear around it. And even some of my closest friends, as we started to become close and we started to tell each other about our origin stories and our families, they were really shocked because they knew my family, they knew other people who I was friends with, they knew what I had accomplished in life so far, and they were just like, wait, you were adopted? That's so crazy.
Yeah, right.
But I really have my parents to thank for that. I mean, my dad, he's Japanese American, born in an internment camp. Again, we all have had these like
I'll bring our stories to the table, right?
My mom was raised as a haole in Hawaii in like the 1950s. So in terms of like racial discrimination,
it's like reverse.
We're experiencing it. My mom being like a minority in Hawaii, right. And my dad being a Japanese American in California in a really, really difficult time to be Japanese.
Wow, that is so interesting.
Yeah, so they are just amazing people. Just work their tails off for us kids. I never felt they both worked full-time jobs and more, and I never felt like they weren't there for me. Even now as they're, almost 80.
Oh my gosh, really?
Yeah, I feel like they're still trying to parent me. They're still
Oh gosh.
there for me. And I'm just like,
Oh.
wow, thanks. But wow, because I just
Yeah.
know so many people
So you had a solid foundation.
don't, yeah, who don't have that.
Right. I know from an early age, you have always been kind of a go-getter. Tell me a little bit about that. Was that just an internal drive, or was that just something that evolved over
It must have
time,
been.
or the
I
Asian
mean, it must
the
have been.
Asian gene?
Maybe. I don't know.
I'm kidding.
Yeah, I mean, it must have been because like my dad would always just say, just do your best and we're happy with you. My
Mm-hmm.
mom would say, yeah, do your best, but don't get below a certain GPA.
But your best might not be good enough.
Yeah,
Just
exactly.
saying. Just saying. Straight A's would be awesome.
Yeah, exactly. And it's interesting because my dad's approach, I actually took as a personal challenge. He was just, oh, whatever, just you'll do whatever. I'm like, do better than whatever. And then with my mom, it was always like she was trying to like kind of hold me back. And I don't mean like a hold me back type of like she didn't want me to succeed. But it was more like, Nancy, you're doing too much. Like you're pushing too much.
Like overachieving.
Yes. And you're going to crash and burn. She's been telling me that since I was about 12 years old.
Sounds, yeah. I think I witnessed that on one or more occasions.
Yes. So yeah, do I think it's probably innate in me? Yeah, probably.
Mm-hmm. Nancy and I were neighbors, for those of you who don't know us personally, and we lived next to each other for quite a few years.
Yeah, like
a lot,
8 years.
Yeah. So we were so lucky to have each other. Just literally, she was 2 doors down. So that was awesome. We're totally.
Our 30s have been so crazy. Like,
we're totally different people now, right? And you think about who we were and who we are now, which is why I wanted to have you on the show. I think some of our patterns are parallel and similar. I think we were very, and I don't want to speak for you, but I know for me, I wanted to present this picture of, I hate to even say it, but like perfection, right? Like I had this perfectionist gene or mindset, which was really basically created by my feeling that I was never enough. So I needed to show everyone that, oh yes, I am. And, that just ended up blowing up in my face. I mean, it just really did over time. It was really tough to maintain, impossible to maintain. But tell me what that was like for you. Did you feel that you might have had that type of mindset or tendencies in your life as well?
Yeah, I mean, Wendy, you basically completed my thought in my sentence just now. That feeling of always chasing and always not measuring up to whatever standard, whether it be you allowing an outside standard to tell you what to do and influence you in a really powerful way, or of course the most powerful one is the one coming from within,
your inner story.
Yeah, and even talking about it right now, I'm just like, oh yeah, I've been the same person, since childhood.
Right. But our lens was different. How we viewed ourselves was so different.
But I definitely felt, and I still feel and still struggle with that feeling of not being enough in who I am giving to the world, not being enough or accepted by my friends or my family or my closest loved ones. And that's some deep-seated shit. I mean, and that's one of the reasons why I think it's been driving me this whole time to do the things I'm doing now to really grow, is because one side of the plate says, keep growing. These are lessons that are going to keep showing up. And the other side is saying, give yourself some compassion. We're all trying to work through this stuff.
Right. It's really a tough balance to maintain.
Yeah.
What had to shift for me was the why. Why am I had to really go deep and ask, why I was trying so hard to please others and
Right.
seek approval for others. Why am I not loving myself for who I am and not allowing myself to see that I'm beautiful and whole and complete? Like I was thinking about this morning, and I was thinking, none of us are broken. None of us are broken, but we view ourselves through a broken lens. It's the filter that's broken. It's not who we are that's broken, right?
Right.
And it took a long time for me to actually believe that. Because I had been, our internal story and our mental that mental chatter that's nonstop in our minds reinforces the the story, right? And if we are attached to a story that's not true, that drives us to behave and make decisions and choices that are aligning with something that's not actually our truth, right? So we get pulled really far off center.
What was your why, Wendy? Can you like articulate?
Um, yeah, I think it's twofold because I grew up in a really high achieving culture, Asian culture. So even if you're on the top of your game and doing your best, it's never like quite enough. It's good. It's not quite good enough. Like you could have probably got an A+ on that. you know. Okay, I'm like, it was an A-. Like, it's pretty good, right? But never like good enough. And then Catholic upbringing, so tons of guilt. You are definitely a sinner. So that you get that message reinforced over time, year after year after year. You start to internalize those messages, right? And then the third thing was I was bullied as a child in school from kindergarten. I had this bully that bullied me for 8 years. 8 years, she bullied me every day at school. And so my goal was to be invisible. You want to be invisible because you don't want to draw attention to yourself. So I just really shrunk and and dimmed my light. Like I didn't want to be seen. And so all of those factors kind of created this mindset that I wasn't worthy, I wasn't good enough, I wasn't enough. Which was bullshit because I figured it out later that I am. But tell me how it showed up for you.
Well, I'll start it out as I'm a very stubborn person who apparently likes to learn the hard way. So I'll start because, like we
Oh
said
no.
before, like we said before, the lessons that we're supposed to be contracted to learn in this life will keep showing up until we pay attention.
More
Right?
aggressively,
Yeah.
more aggressively.
And I
Yeah.
have to say, probably the one that slapped me in the face the hardest at first was 7 years ago when I kind of hit rock bottom with my marriage. I had been married to my ex husband for 13 years, been with him for 14, met him while I was still in college, very young, and just jumped in 2 feet without my head. Honestly,
Mhm.
looking
Mhm.
back, hindsight's 2020.
Mhm.
Um, that was a huge hit to me, and I know that divorces and separations are very common, but that doesn't mean that they're not significant. Just like having children is very common, but it's not insignificant, right?
Right.
Um, and that failure that I called that for a lot of time
Right.
was a huge lesson because um, you talked about just like feeling bullied and wanting to just kind of become a smaller person because you don't want to deal with that conflict. You don't want to feel rejected, or that somehow something that you did ended your life, ended what you know. And at the time, we had our 3-year-old daughter who had just gotten diagnosed with a seizure disorder. So to me,
so much stress.
my life was literally imploding. And I had made so many sacrifices for my ex-husband to try to make him happy, including moving upstate from San Diego to Northern California. He had actually accepted a job up here without telling me.
Oh gosh.
And
I remember that.
Yeah, I've been a hairdresser for almost 16 years now. So I was doing hair in San Diego, and I had worked really hard to build and sustain my business down there. And so that created a lot of conflict between us, and it was really funny because I always would blame him. I would always just say like, oh, you're not valuing me. You're not considering my picture and my
vision,
this whole deal. But the truth was, he was reflecting me. He was reflecting how I was placing myself in this.
Isn't that the biggest aha moment?
Yes.
When you realize that the way you are being treated is a reflection of how little you value yourself.
Yeah.
And your desire to avoid conflict so that you don't have to deal or look at yourself and look at your stuff is actually, it's harmful. We don't realize it at the time because we're trying to survive, right?
Yeah.
We're just trying to survive and keep a happy face on and make it look like everything's cool, everything's great.
Yes.
But you just cannot bury your stuff. Like, we are in a culture that tells us to just keep distracting. Keep distracting. Let's go on this vacation. Let's go to this happy hour. Let's go out and have fun. Everything's external. Because we want to avoid, actually, we know deep down, we know our truth, but to look at it and have to own our shit, it's so hard. Especially if you're like us, like we kind of look like we have our shit together, and you don't really want to go there.
It's really hard because I think a lot of people, me, myself included, anything that I say, basically, I've experienced and continue to struggle with. So I'm not here to teach at all. Like, this is all like things that I deal with on a daily basis. But I think that the hardest and scariest thing about like looking within is that, oh my gosh, I don't want to start this pity party, because if I start looking into like these things, we all kind of know in the back of our minds some of our deeper pains and our deeper issues that we know we have. But if we can just keep covering it over, maybe get so down deep that
you never have to look at it.
Yeah,
it'll disappear.
And also too, that feeling of loneliness, that you're the only one going through it, is a bigger piece of the puzzle as well.
The suffering is so deep and it's so private,
and you feel like nobody wants to hear about that.
Exactly.
Nobody will understand.
Yes.
Oh, that's just you like feeling sorry for yourself. Like, why don't you just fix
that? I also kind of felt like, well, everyone's got their problems. Like, I don't want to add my story or my suffering to the mix. Like, I'll talk to people about, some of the darkest times in my life, and they're like, what? You never, are you serious? Like, you were that deep? Like, you never shared that with me? Or, I mean, these are like my best friends, like I was so adept at that's just suffering alone, in my within myself. And I kind of liken it to, like, when you have a dam that's about to break and there you have your like finger on the crack. And then I knew, like, as soon as I took my finger off, it would all just like blow up, like just crumble, you know. Um,
But then what do you have after that, right?
yeah, you find yourself.
The
You,
rain piece, right? The dam,
yes,
avalanche of
it
water,
all
it
clears,
all clears.
and then you get to get the gift of yourself because you discover yourself in that healing process,
Right.
right? So, what were some of the pivotal things that got you to shift? Obviously, the divorce was a huge step for you.
The divorce was a huge step, but I definitely will admit that I stayed in the anger stage for a very long time. A why me and a very, very strong um, anger.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's a toxic place to be
Yes.
in that space of anger and resentment. And I think
Yes.
when it comes down to it, if we were going to be honest, we're really angry at ourselves
Right. Right.
for
And
allowing it to get that deep.
it continued to perpetuate itself. My daughter's health rapidly declined within 1 to 2 years time period after our divorce, which I don't think is a coincidence.
Well,
Um,
she's probably very sensitive too, so she's probably internalizing a lot of your stuff, his stuff, the back and forth, even if you're not speaking to her about it in
yeah,
adult terms. She's still feeling it, right?
yeah, and on top of that, she is also autistic, so
Mm-hmm.
she can't directly express what
Articulate.
she's feeling,
Yeah.
but that is something that I think allows me to be a better mom to her because I really can sense how she's feeling. Like she
Oh,
doesn't have to use her words.
oh, that's so awesome, Nancy.
Because I know that she can sense how I feel.
Right.
Um,
Right.
but at any rate, when her health was really, really declining very quickly, my ex-husband and I had a very, very heated debate and argument over how to treat
Mm-hmm.
her illness. And to make a long story short, he used every possible, even illegal ways to try to get around me to get her a very experimental, very invasive treatment that me and the doctors were
Advised against.
yes, we're not on board with. So not only was it something that was just completely like, oh my god, what in the world is happening, but it was happening to my kid. I mean,
I
it's
know.
the most sensitive
Precious.
thing you could ever do to
Yeah.
somebody.
I know. How did you navigate that? Like, how did you survive it? Because you were already just fresh off this divorce in this contentious place. Now you're dealing with a crisis with your most precious gift in the world, and you're not on the same page.
Right.
How did you navigate that? How did you resolve that?
Well, it didn't get resolved at the time, actually. I would say I only was surviving. I was very much treading water. I
Mm-hmm.
really leaned on the new people in my life here in Northern California. When I separated from my ex, I really was so surprised and grateful about how many wonderful new people came into my life, including my current partner.
Mm-hmm.
Um, just a completely different spirit space, a completely different headspace, who were just literally not even barely knowing me, unconditionally loving me at the time.
Oh.
and
That's so
having
awesome.
compassion for my situation when it was just like, I'm just
Yeah.
this random person coming into town. Why me? Why would you want to be friends with me? I'm in a really horrible space right now. But yet they embraced me, right? Like I couldn't feel more grateful for that. And I'm still very close to those individuals. And then of course, my core girlfriends, you included, Wendy,
Oh,
who have been through everything with me from the beginning.
yeah. Yeah.
You guys just like banded together yet separately to like during this time.
Yeah.
But
It's
I
so
would say that was
hard.
the only way I could cope or live through it. But
Hmm.
again, hindsight's 2020. I was not coping with it. Um, in fact, 6 months after my daughter's surgery, which I'll fast forward that she's doing very well now. So
Thank God. I know. And it was a major surgery. Was it a brain surgery? It was like a major surgery.
no,
No?
no, actually, it was the least invasive, non-chemical um, treatment for her seizures that we originally were going to do, but it got delayed by almost 2 years because of this conflict between me and my
Oh
ex-husband.
my gosh.
Um,
Wow. Really? I didn't know it was delayed that long.
yes, yes. So when we finally did it, all it was, it's called a VNS, which is a vagus nerve stimulator.
Hmm.
And it's kind of like a pacemaker, but for the brain. And it doesn't even
Wow.
have to be inserted into your head. It's literally a little disc that's inserted into my daughter's, just under the skin on her chest. And they have a bungee wire that is wrapped around her vagus nerve in her neck. And they can remotely program the stimulator to send an electrical signal to this nerve, which then disrupts and stops seizures.
That's incredible. Wow.
And they've been using this technology for almost 100 years. So,
Really? A
yes.
100 years?
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy.
And,
Wow.
but the way that they've been able to advance the technology for it to actually be like internal in the body and for them to be able to program it to send the electrical signals, like let's say every 3 minutes, that's what my daughter gets. Um, and also for it to detect an onset of a possible breakthrough seizure.
Hmm.
Um, she got that surgery in June of 2016. And now here we are almost 4 years later, and she is almost completely off of
Anti-seizure
medication.
meds.
And
Wow.
she has not had a breakthrough seizure in over a year.
That's
So
fantastic.
it's huge. And we're seeing so many huge improvements in her communication, huge improvements in her ability to learn. It's awesome. So it's ending happily.
What did
Or
you learn about yourself through that whole process?
so
Looking back.
so after the 6 month surgery, or 6 months after Eleanor's surgery, my daughter's name's Eleanor, I started having these strange pains in my body that I thought were just like cramps, you know, but they were a little bit more severe than that. Like nothing I had um, ever experienced, and it went from intermittent to all day, every day.
Wow. And you are in the salon on your feet with interacting with people
Mhm.
all day long. I don't know how you managed to hold it
And my
together.
doctors could not figure it out. I went to the emergency room probably every other week for about a month because the pain was so unbearable. I literally thought I was dying. I mean, it was crazy. And then that pain continued to progress over about a 4 month period. And again, I told you I'm really stubborn. I have a really hard
Yes, you
time
are.
letting go. I would
Control of
the job was
control.
not working. My
Yeah.
clients had no idea that I was in this level of pain. I would literally cry my eyes out before I went to work, trying to just get it all out,
Oh my
and
God.
then just trample through my day, keeping a smile on my face. and then come home and just collapse and cry myself to sleep.
And you still had Eleanor. It's not like you
And
still had to be a mom and cook her dinner. And
my partner had no idea what to do. He was just like, you've gone to the doctors, they're trying to give you this medication, it's not working. And he was just sitting there like watching me suffer and not knowing what the hell was going on. Then it got to the point where I nearly collapsed at work, and I literally like couldn't get up. And I went to the back room. We had this little couch, and I couldn't get up. And it was very scary for my coworkers, and they were just like, "We have seen you suffering here. This is unacceptable. Like, we're gonna take you to the hospital. There's some, something needs to happen here. We'll call the salon owner, like, to tell her what's going on for you, whatever." And meanwhile, in the background, my doctors were like, "We're not sure. We'll figure this out, but you might have cancer." And I'm like, "What?" Like, I mean, just they were very nonchalant about it. I should say. They're just kind of like, "We'll figure this out eventually. Let's try to manage your pain, but it's looking like cancer. Can't really confirm yay or nay, but it's looking like cancer." And I just, again, like I had no way of coping with it. I didn't know.
There's no box to put that in, right?
Yeah,
how do you even accept that?
Rolling through, thinking, "Oh, just cover it up.
I'm just going to steamroll right through this." Yeah.
So I took a leave from work. Within the first week of that leave, I was admitted to the hospital because I had lost maybe 30 pounds in about 30 days. I could not even walk barely from my bed to the restroom. My blood pressure was so low that they couldn't detect it.
Wow. Let's see. What year was this?
2017. Actually, it's very interesting that we're going through this whole COVID thing right now, because it was 3 years from now that this was all happening to me. My body was literally shutting down. They had to give me a blood transfusion while they were doing all the tests and trying to figure out what the hell was going on. And they did 3 surgeries to take biopsies to try to see what in the world this mysterious growth. It was a inflammation that was like tearing through my insides and through my abdominal wall.
It had to be stress related for sure. Like knowing how hard you drive and how hard you push. And I remember you building your business so aggressively. You were like a machine. Like you did not stop. You did not stop. You did not even breathe, I think, through that whole period.
No.
So just a manifestation of all of that stress, and maybe not giving yourself permission, right, to connect to yourself, because you were so focused on getting where you wanted to go. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah. And in the debrief that I had sent you over email before this conversation, I talked about I am using the words rock bottom.
Yeah.
And everybody has a different reference for that, right? Depending on your personal experience.
Yeah.
But to be perfectly transparent, my rock bottom was when I was actually ready to die.
Yeah.
Like I literally thought that was it. And I was in so much anguish and so much pain that I literally was willing to give up my daughter. I was willing to give up motherhood. I was willing to give up the life that I've worked so hard to build. But talk about like just a moment in time where I felt like I was so not enough that I would actually be okay. Like,
oh, Nancy. I knew I should have brought Kleenex to this freaking interview. I knew I should have. Oh my gosh, Nancy.
And that was at that point in the hospital. I was filled with so much fear and so much like lack of hope. I've never been that low ever. And it's really crazy that my angels, my spirit angels were there for me even then. because I had this nighttime nurse
Mm-hmm.
who I swear was like a monk in disguise. He
Mm-hmm.
was this amazing person. And I think he was from the Philippines. And he noticed like at 3 in the morning that I was up and awake and crying. And
Mm-hmm.
it was the night before the last surgery I was going to have. And he just started talking to me and speaking to me in such a divine way. Um, and he ended up sharing a very close story of his own about his son's death. Now, this man was like maybe 4 or 5 years older than me.
Wow.
And he had talked about the level of anger that he dealt with for so long and the level of this bitterness that he had held in for so long.
Wow.
And that he had had a vision of his son, and his son had come to him and basically been like, what are you doing? Like, none of this for me. This is not how I want you to be. And since he was able to have that vision, like his son never came back to him.
Mm-hmm.
But he started to
Change.
change and look within himself again and realize, wait a second, like this this isn't the lesson that I'm supposed to be learning right now about how to hold on to fear and doubt and anger for this long.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
It eats you up.
yeah,
It physically destroys you over
and
time.
it's funny because I have like
Mm-hmm.
some new friends that I've met recently, and the one of the first nights that we hung out, this story came up. I don't know how.
Really? The first night?
Why in the
Wow.
world I would start talking about this. I don't know, but it's interesting. Like we immediately connected, and like we are like close friends, the four of us. Like we're close friends now because of
Mm-hmm.
this level of like transparency.
Vulnerability and
Exactly. And
yeah.
I'm like, oh my god, like I can't believe number one that happened to you, but like look at you now, kind of scenario. Like they couldn't even picture me in that space of being that small.
You know, it's so hard when you're in the dark, when you're in that darkest place alone with yourself. It's so hard to see what's possible for you.
Yeah.
It's so hard for you to see your light and your mission here and who you are meant to be. But at the same time, I think you and I are so alike. We both had to be taken so deep before we were willing to change. It took that because we're so damn stubborn and we're so we're so good at showing up for everybody but ourselves. And I think I speak for millions of women out there.
Yeah.
And probably some men too, but I know women especially have not been good about honoring our time, our space, our truth, and giving ourselves permission to set boundaries um, and really connect and align with who we are as a soul. Because we're so busy, we're so distracted all the time, you know? So, how did you, first of all, I'm so glad that you didn't leave us that day. I'm so grateful you're still in my life. And just so grateful that we're still friends and you're still here. You know? But how did you turn things around? How did you come back to healing and come back to yourself? You know?
Um, so that was 3 years ago. And it's been this steady process, but I think in the back of my mind, when I was able to come out of it, after they did the second surgery, or the third surgery, they literally the pain stopped in its tracks.
Wow.
Like I had the surgery at like 3:00 on that day. And then I slept that next day, had a million nightmares.
Wow.
And then the next morning had no pain at all.
That's crazy.
So to me, that was a miracle.
Yeah.
And I also swore to myself that I could never let that happen again. Okay. Okay. Yeah. You finally had me paying attention.
It took years. They finally got you. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Let's eliminate your family and your husband that you created. Let's put your
literally everything
in jeopardy.
Everything.
Okay, finally, let's like get you to the point where you're okay dying. Okay, how much lower do we need to be in order for you to hear our messages? And I tell myself those are my spirit angels telling me that, like,
yeah,
that hello.
Yeah.
So, and I always say this, that I go through this every day because it's true. I wake up every morning in that fear space. And I guess that's something that's like biological. We all do that. If you think about it, like when we wake up in the morning, that's when our cortisol levels are the highest. And that's, for survival, back in the day when we were living in the wilderness and what have you, like being asleep was a weakness because you weren't protected and somebody had to stay awake next to you to protect you from predators and stuff like that. So when we wake up in the morning, that feeling of insecurity or those feelings of fear that we aren't even aware of.
Do you still have that?
Yes.
Really? Because you've really been working so much on meditation and.
Well, that's why I started meditating in the morning and trying to exercise as much as I can in the morning, because those are the only things that quiet those messages. I mean, I've
demons.
been doing that for like over this past year to like make that a priority and a habit of mine. And that's exiting out 42 years of a habit on the opposite end.
It's like you're reprogramming yourself. You're having to, I think what people don't understand is we have all these patterns that don't serve us and beliefs around who we are or who we aren't. And all of that is literally programming. And what that does over time is it gets into our psyche. It programs our biological vehicles. We are actually programming our bodies with the thoughts that we're telling ourselves, and the fears and the anger, or all those aspects of self that are lower vibrational. And now is a really critical time, especially with this virus and a lot of the fears being triggered, right? There's financial fears, there's physical fears, there's biological fears. To really take a look at that and try to find ways to start to shift that story, because that's an old paradigm that needs to be released.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't serve us.
On a global and
on a global
massively
scale.
Spiritual level.
Yes. Sure. And I really feel that this entire global experience is to give people an opportunity to do just that, what we're talking about, to look at ourselves, to connect with what really matters in life, to turn the lens inward, because now we don't have those distractions. We can't go off to a concert or fly somewhere or go to a bar or even a restaurant or coffee with friends. We're actually all home, spending time with ourselves and looking at ourselves, right?
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that people will literally start to unpack some of this stuff and some of this baggage and let it go through tools like meditation, humor. We have to let ourselves go. We have to raise our vibe. We have to allow ourselves to be ourselves.
Definitely.
And we're better to do that than at home.
Yeah.
Right? And connect to ourselves and our story. So,
And that's honestly like, just like I was coping through, some of the biggest challenges in my personal life. I've had just kind of this steady stream of mentors, both people who I've known personally, like you, and people in my business world who have helped me tremendously,
right.
guide me through these steps. And then even like some um, larger influencers who are really trying to send that message of putting that work internal. And one of the
Yeah.
things that I think is pretty amazing about what we're going through as a planet right now is, for so many of the recent years, we've really abused our technology. We have these amazing tools to be able to connect with one another and to
Mm-hmm.
make a difference in one another's lives and outlooks on life. Yet, we haven't been doing that. We've been voyeuring. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying all this because I've done it. Like,
We're all guilty.
yeah, I have done it all. Like voyeuring, cyber stalking, shopping incessantly. Like, you
Yeah.
know what I mean? Just
Mm-hmm.
everything that disconnects us.
Right.
It makes us feel, envious or jealous of one another, or feeling like we're missing out on something
Mm-hmm.
when a lot of it's just contrived. It's not
Mm-hmm.
even real,
It's like smoke and mirrors,
Yeah,
and
definitely.
and people are buying into the illusion that this is reality, that you have to look this way, you have to weigh this much, you have to have this bag, you have to,
Yeah, and I think
chase that illusion, right?
a lot of us have been struggling with that, and blaming it on the technology, blaming it on this ability that we've been given to do these things, when it's really, we're doing it to
It's
ourselves.
personal choice.
It is. It is personal choice.
Yeah.
But again, on a global scale, I think that personal connection, even though we can't be together physically, is going
Mm-hmm.
to be on the rise. I mean,
I'm seeing it outside. Just I have to walk my dog,
yeah,
and I'm seeing people out with their families. My son Kai and my husband Mike went for a run last night. There's a park. Our parks are open. They said it was so crowded. It's like, I guess, I mean, the parks are open. People need an outlet, right, to exercise and whatnot. But, um, you know, the beauty of that is to see families actually spending time together, which they probably haven't in the past,
yeah,
or making time to sit down and eat together, because not everybody's running off to sports and school, and maybe more
yeah.
family meals. And um, this paradigm is going to shift because of this, and it can, based on our choices, be a very positive shift.
Yeah.
So I'm
And
hoping.
what's really interesting is yesterday I tried to meditate to my favorite music, and on my Instagram, on my stories, I do try to share some of those things that I meditate to, because
Mm-hmm.
if it's resonating with me, the likelihood that it would resonate with someone else out there.
Sure.
And
Sure.
so I just listened to music, and that was one thing too that I think stopped me from trying to do the meditation, is because it had been told to me how to do it,
Mm-hmm.
and none of that worked for me. And so I thought,
Yeah.
oh, I guess it's not for me then, right? Rather than just saying fuck it and like doing it how I want to do it.
Yeah.
And
That's the important thing. I think people have these preconceived ideas of how things need to look,
right.
but we're here to live life for ourselves.
Yes.
What's aligned for us?
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to be in yoga pants in some amazing, Himalayan
Yeah.
space. Okay, with monks and
Yeah.
the sweeping view and the view. We're here to do life the way we're supposed to do life. We're not here to be a reflection or a mirror everything outside of us.
And
So
so,
your
yeah,
meditation, yeah.
so after I do my meditation, it was recommended to me that I journal afterward. And I've journaled a fair amount over the years, but it was always under this pretense that someone was going to read it. Which
So you're
again,
even filtering your journaling.
so same thing with the meditation thing. It's just like, oh, I feel like I got to do it a certain way. Well,
Right.
journaling, well, I got to journal a certain way because even if I read it or if nobody reads it, someone's going to read it. Oh my gosh. Rather than it being this, your spirit coming out through the pen, and your ability to, the gift that you give yourself to be able to
be vulnerable,
flow and see your thoughts on paper.
Yeah.
So one of the things that came up in my journal, which I thought was really interesting, and I've heard this before, but it's never come out of me, was the whole eye of the storm thing, where it's just like, here I am in the center, and it's quiet and at peace and grounded and solid and unbreakable. And then you have this kind of swirl that starts, and it starts kind of slow, and then as it starts going around and around, it gets more and more chaotic in its wake. It's just nuts. And I thought, I lived out here for so long. I lived out here where you just get pummeled by life. And then you get thrown over here and you get pummeled again. And, somehow you're bouncing around like, what the F? Like just, And how long it is today. I drew a picture of it. And it's like, how long has it taken me to
come back to center,
that spot, and that it's literally unbreakable.
Absolutely.
And that all this shit going on in here is never going to change. It's never going to go away.
It can't touch you. Once you find yourself and align with yourself, nothing can touch you because you're so balanced and you're so calm. You literally are the eye of the storm. You don't have to. It gives you this level of detachment.
Yes.
Where you can observe everyone's behaviors and all this chaos and not take it on as your own. It's a huge gift.
It's a huge gift. And I feel so strongly that my purpose is to share that as much as I can in the most compassionate way that I can, in the connections I make with the people in my life, my clients and coworkers, my, connections via social media, all of that. Everything that I say or do needs to come from that space.
Yes. Absolutely.
But especially always beginning the day, and even now I'm having to do it in the afternoon because I get these tension headaches in the afternoon because I start absorbing the shit from the day, and I'm realizing how sensitive I've become to it now.
What happens too is once you start to tune in and connect to yourself, your consciousness starts to expand. Your gifts start to come online, so to speak. So you start to become more intuitive because you're more aligned. When you're off center and distracted, there's too much noise. But as you come back to that still point, that 0 point field of potential and creativity, that is where we get a lot of downloads and information from ourselves because we've created that space and that channel for it. So I'm hoping that, we both can help people through our example, really just by being ourselves, observe that this is possible. And we know how to help you to get back to that space, right? If people are interested in getting back to that space.
Yeah, and I have to say this is that, Wendy, even before you started doing the healing work that you do now, you've always been there for me. Like, even even when we would just be like shooting the shit, like in the driveway in front of our places,
Yeah.
and even the times when you would get so frustrated with me because I complain incessantly about my life, and you're just like, what are you gonna do about it, and I'm just, I don't know.
Yeah. You weren't ready. But sometimes we can plant these seeds, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can plant these seeds. And one day that person is going to be ready.
Yes.
And they might go back to something you said or something that was just kind of innocently planted back a couple years ago.
Oh.
And it starts to make sense and resonate.
Know that I remember those moments.
Do you really? Oh,
and
I'm so glad.
It means a tremendous amount to me. And
Thank you.
I'm so happy that you've been able to find your purpose and your mission. And
Yes.
I know you're doing a lot of freaking good out there.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. It has been such an honor, though, to be in your life and walk beside you, Nancy, to see you flourish. Nancy is at Elevation Salon in Livermore, California. I know that they're closed right now, but in a month, if you need a stylist or two, I highly recommend her. I'm going to put her contact information, her Instagram, her
and even if you don't
her info.
Need a stylist, and you're not in the Northern California area, definitely follow me on Instagram because, again, like we talked about in this fun little chat, is like I'm just trying to help people out the way I can. I do a lot of videos. I talk a lot about like my day-to-day life and certain things that'll help me get through my day in a more positive and fruitful way rather than just running on fumes and being crazy.
Yeah.
And I try to put funny stuff on there too, so we're all in this together. And
she gives awesome hair tip videos, which I watch. My hair never looks like that. It looks like this, but I try. I watch them and I do practice her techniques, but she's got a little magic something going on over there. But if you want some hair tips or tools, check out her Instagram. She used to be my stylist before we had to separate and move to different now states and cities. But Nancy, I just honor your journey. I honor your work. I love you so much, and I'm so grateful that you're in my life and that you're able to share your story. Very few guests of mine make me cry, so thanks for that. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're still here with us. I love you so much. Do you have any, parting words or advice that you want to share before we sign off today?
Well, first of all, thank you so much. It's such an honor to be on this with you, and
thank you.
Just Wendy, whoever you come across, you just make us feel so cherished and honored.
Thank you.
That's a huge gift of yours, and you continue to do that.
Thank you so much.
In terms of words of advice, you guys, like I'm not, I'm just like not in the position to like be giving advice, but more of just I guess a leading through example, like be the person that you want to see in this world. It's been said by so many famous people, but the golden rule: treat people the way you want to be treated, and look in the mirror and say that to yourself, that you deserve the love that you so freely give other people. It's so huge, and it's so essential at this time for our, not only our physical survival, but I think our spiritual survival and our ability to navigate the storm. That's
be the eye of the storm, people. You can do it. You can reach out if you need some help with that. We've had some experience firsthand.
Use the technology to connect. Use the technology to bring something funny and something uplifting in your world.
There's so much good stuff out there. You can get on YouTube and just laugh your ass off. I mean, you can find such hilarious stuff. We need to raise each other up. We need to raise ourselves up. Give yourself permission to be you, because you are a light in this world. You're here to be you and not be anything else. And to my audience, I just want to thank you all for showing up today. I love you guys so much. Be kind to yourselves, and I will talk to you all later. We'll see you next time. Bye. Bye.